and I am a spinner of tales, a weaver of the web of story. And I came to it rather naturally. I'm a father. What dad hasn't told his children a story now and again? I'm a grandfather. And what grandfather hasn't told his grandchildren that the moon is made of cheese? I have. But as I became more and more into telling stories, I realized that I wanted to branch out beyond the usual stuff. And I wanted to tell stories from around the world. And tonight, here, I play no instrument, I sing no song as beautiful as those before me, but I can tell stories. I can tell stories. So hopefully you will enjoy. How I came to this point is I only needed one thing. You can provide the music in your mind as the story is webbed. I suggest tuba or ukulele. All I needed was a storytelling hat. And once I got the storytelling hat, there was no stopping me. So I looked throughout the world for different stories to tell. I like the fables and the myths and the stories of long ago, the once upon a time stories. So today, I'm going to tell you a story that comes from Russia. Now this book here is War and Peace, so if you'll all settle back. Chapter 1. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tell you a story that came from before War and Peace. And that was a story that's titled in Russia, The Oak and the Man. And this story is told in one version or another throughout the entire world. But the Russian story goes something like this. There was an oak tree, so large it filled the village square. And everyone in the village loved that oak tree. And it had legends, superstitions, and stories connected to it. It was said that if you spoke ill while under those branches of that oak tree, something bad would befall you. If you cursed under those branches, you would get sick. If you littered under those branches, you might break a bone. If you lied under those branches, death might come to your family. But there was also good superstitions and legends and stories about that oak tree. For if two people fell in love, they would go underneath that oak tree and they would savor their first kiss, and their love would grow and blossom. If a woman wanted to have a child, she would go underneath those branches and sit with the oak, and soon she would be with child. And when a woman was pregnant, she would go under that oak tree and she would touch the oak, drawing strength for herself and her baby. And when that baby was born, they would take that child underneath that oak tree and lay it at the very base. And that child would grow up strong and healthy, and he or she would be a great member of their community. And if someone in the village was sick, they would bring that sick person to the oak tree, and the person would reach out and touch the oak and find protection and draw strength. Yes, Everyone in the village loved that oak tree. And the house that was closest to the oak tree, there lived a little old man and a little old lady. And one day, for reasons known only to themselves, they decided to move. Perhaps it was to move across the country to live with a grandchild. Perhaps it was to buy a Winnebago of their day, a cart and wagon, and travel and see the world. Whatever. They left, and they sold the house to a man. Now, the man moved into the house, and he was very, very happy. He got his sofa just so. He got his cabinet just so. He straightened his pictures just so. And he felt pretty satisfied. And he went to the window, and he looked out, and the only thing he could see was that oak tree. And he said, that oak tree's got to go. It's blocking my sun. I want sun. I don't want to see that oak tree. And so he went out into the village, and he asked everybody, because as you all know, cutting down an oak tree isn't all that easy. So he would go to people in the village and he would say, want to help me cut this oak tree down? And they, whoa, no, no. And they would tell him the stories of the babies, the old people, the sick people, the lovers. And it went in one ear and right out the other ear. He was determined to cut down that oak tree. And after he had gone throughout the entire village and no one would help him, he said, well, I'll just do it myself. But first, I need a good night's sleep. And so he went to bed, and the next morning he was going to cut down the oak tree. Well, as things happen, in the middle of the night, the man, he had a vision, a dream, a premonition. Something happened. And he dreamt that outside, a great crack, and the tree began to sway back and forth. The storm was more than a storm. It was a hurricane. It was a tempest. And the leaves started to rattle, and the branches started to crack and shake, and the boughs were buckling. It was as if that oak tree was talking to the storm itself. And the oak tree was saying, this is it. In the morning, I'm cut down. I'm dying. And the storm raged, and lightning crashed down and shook the very earth and the house. And the man jumped up out of bed, and without even putting his clothes over his pajamas, he ran outside and he said, no, oak tree, hang on. Hang on. It is not your time yet. And he wrapped his arms around that oak tree as far as he could reach. Old friend, you're not going to die. Listen, the wind is slowing down, but the wind was blowing harder, and it almost heaved the ground with its power. But it passed. And just then, he woke up. Well, of course, the first thing he did was run to the window and look. And there in the sunlight stood that oak tree, strong and straight and powerful. And he ran out there and he said, good oak, we will be friends forever. And that is the end of the story. But what about War and Peace, the 8th largest book in the world, the 2nd largest single volume book in the world? Did Leo Tolstoy have any memory of that oak tree? Did he put any reference to that oak tree in War and Peace? to read this because I don't want to take Leo's words out of his mouth. The old oak, utterly transformed, draped in a tent of sappy dark green, basked faintly, undulating in the rays of the evening sun, of the knotted fingers, the gnarled outgrowth, the aged grief, and the mistrust. Nothing was to be seen. Through the rough, century-old bark, where there were no twigs, leaves had burst out, so sappy, so young, it was hard to believe that that aged creature had borne them. Yes, it is the same tree, thought Prince Andrei, and all at once came upon him an irrational spring feeling of joy and renewal. All the best moments of his life rose up to his memory at once, thrilled by the beauty of this night and that moon. It all rushed into his mind. It was a gift from the oak.